students. Welcome to part 2 of today's lecture on sentence types and sentence problems. We are going to cover part 2 now, which talks about sentence problems. There are 3 types of problems here, and that's going to be on the next slide. And for this slide, we're going to look at some sentences which are not correct. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences, and all of these are incorrect, and there's at least one thing wrong with them. Now, when you're watching this part of the video, it would be very good for you if you have already watched part 1 and taken notes from it and reviewed what the 6 types of sentences are. So, knowing what are the right types of sentences, 5 of the 6 types are right. The first type is a dependent clause, which is not a sentence, would help you figure out what's wrong with these sentences. So, for now, we're going to use 2 things, the lecture slides and the Cornell notes, which I'm going to show later. Here, though, let's read the sentences. So you can pause this video, write down these 5 sentences, and circle anything that is wrong with these sentences. And if you have extra time, write down the correct sentence. You may need to add some words. So go ahead, pause the video, write down the sentences, and figure out what's wrong. Have you found any errors in the sentences? Let's look at them one at a time, starting with sentence 1. Sentence 1 reads, "After all is said and done." Well, we have all, that is a subject, and is, that is a verb, and then said and done, that makes the rest of the sentence. However, we have the word after here. And do you remember what after is? What kind of word? If you said a coordinating conjunction, that's correct. A subordinate conjunction, so here this is actually a dependent clause. And there's another word for dependent clause. It's called a sentence fragment. And we're going to see this term again as the first problem of sentence errors. Now, how about the second sentence? Because the hero decided there was no high road in this situation. What do you think is the problem here? Well, we have the hero, that's the subject, decided, that's the verb, and then the rest of the sentence, that there was no high road in this situation. You have a prepositional phrase right here. And the subject is about the hero who decided something. There was no high road in the situation. But again, notice the word because. A subordinate conjunction. And what type of sentence is this? Again, it's a dependent clause. And dependent clauses are not sentences. So it's another sentence fragment. So far, so good. We looked at 2 out of the 5 sentences and identified the error with them. Starting a clause with a subordinate conjunction is going to make the clause a dependent clause and a sentence fragment. I've seen a few of these errors in this course with some of your writing, so check your own writing again in assignment 1. Learn from your mistakes, change the sentences using today's lecture, and make sure you avoid the same mistake in lecture 2. Alright, let's read the third sentence. A lot of students struggle with their first year of post-secondary, many overcome these difficulties to become successful in university. Have you figured out what's wrong with this sentence? Remember what type of sentence this could be. How many clauses are there? We have a lot of students struggle with their first year of post-secondary. a lot of students, that's your complex subject, and then struggle. And they struggle with something, struggle with their first year of university. So this clause has a subject and a verb, and there's no subordinate conjunction before it. It's an independent clause. Now, how about the next part? Many overcome these difficulties to become successful in university. So, many, this is many of the students, overcome, there's your verb, and then these difficulties, that's your object, okay? And then a preposition phrase, to overcome, to become successful in university. And that's clause 2, and it is also independent. It follows the same structure. No subordinate conjunction at the beginning. It has a subject and a verb. But look here, look at the connection between them. The punctuation is only a comma. When you connect two independent clauses together, you have, do you remember? A compound sentence. And compound sentences need a semicolon or a comma and a subordinate conjunction like and, or, but, nor, etc. And because you only have a comma, this is called a comma splice, where you use only a comma to connect independent clauses to make a compound sentence. Now we have two more sentences. Number 4. She did well in university. Her average was 88%. Remember to check for subjects and verbs here. See what's wrong with this sentence. How many subjects and verbs can you find? Well, let's take a look. She is one subject. Did is the subject, is the verb here, verb 1. So she did well in university. So that's one clause. And then we have her average. So that's subject 2, was verb 2, and then that's the mark. That's clause 2. Notice here we have two independent clauses, clause 1 and clause 2. Both are independent, but there's not even a comma this time. It's only a space. Nothing is used to connect them. This is a fusion of two sentences. In the sentence problem, this is called a fused sentence. You'll see that in the next slide. This is when you connect two independent clauses together and you don't even use a comma. So remember, when you use a comma, like sentence 3, to connect two clauses, that's a comma splice. When you don't have a comma and you connect two clauses together, it's called a fused sentence. Take a look at number 5, the last sentence. Instructors have a very clear idea in mind when they give assignments to students. However, students often don't know what the instructor expects. How many clauses are in this sentence and what's being used to connect them? Can you see it? Well, the first clause is instructors have a very clear idea in mind when they give assignments to students. So you have a long predicate, have a very clear in mind when they give assignments to students. And then the next clause, students often don't know what the instructor expects. So notice you have two big clauses and two separate sentences, and it's connected with however. However, take a look at how it's used. Instead of a semicolon to connect sentences with a transition word, there's only a comma here. And when you use a comma instead of a semicolon to connect two independent clauses, you have another comma splice. Alright, so here are the 5 sentences, and we've just figured out what problems they have. And looking at these problems, you can also see how to fix them. So let's go to the next slide and look at the rules. And here, while we're looking at the slides, we can try using the Cornell notes again. So this time, if you remember, our last set of notes is on part 1. Part 1. And this is all about sentence types, the 6 types. Okay, so we didn't have time to go through part 2, and we're using a separate video to cover part 2, sentence problems. So we're going to do that now. So again, we make our sections, cues, details, and the summary. Okay, so we're talking about sentence problems here. And I'm going to add how to fix them. And there are 3 problems, so I'm going to use lots of space this time because we're going to talk about the problems and how to fix them. So the first problem, sentence fragment. Now I remember these because I'm teaching, but if you're stuck, you can always look. See? You can check the slides, and yes, we have the first problem, second problem, and third problem. So the first problem is indeed a sentence fragment, second problem is a comma splice, and the third problem is a fused sentence. Here we have the explanation for the first problem, explanation for the second problem, and explanation for the third problem. And here we have examples. Now, in addition to the examples, we're going to try and fix these sentences. So let's start with the first one, a sentence fragment. So before I forget, I'm going to write the 3 different types and add details as I go. Comma, splice, and fused sentence. Alright, so let's see. What is the definition? Well, let's see what it says. It reads, there are 2 ways to make a sentence fragment. So either 1, the sentence doesn't have one of the components of a sentence. It's missing a subject or verb. Or number 2 is a subordinate, a dependent clause. So it starts with a subordinating conjunction such as because and who. Okay, so let's write down the 2 possible ways to make a sentence fragment. So 1, missing subject or verb. Sometimes you probably won't miss both. You have at least one of these. And 2 is a dependent clause. So, i.e., it has a subordinate conjunction. So the example we see here here's the example. My uncle who likes to talk a lot. So we do have a subject, we do have a verb, but the verb has a subordinate conjunction before it. So this is actually just describing the uncle who talks a lot. We don't know what the uncle is actually doing. we need to add a verb. So let's figure that out. First, I'm going to write an example. The teacher who likes to eat. Oh, that's cool. Who likes fruit. Sure. So right now we have a sentence fragment because we only have the subject and then the verb likes, but we have a subordinate conjunction before it, and we need to fix it. So I'm going to write a solution. So the solution is add missing component or remove the subordinate conjunction. However, you have to choose carefully because these actions will change the meaning of your sentence. So for example, A, I would say the teacher who likes fruits ran away. So I added a verb without a subordinate conjunction. So there's a teacher and the teacher ran away. But what kind of teacher? It's a teacher who likes fruit. Okay. B is completely different. Here we got teacher. I removed the subordinate conjunction. The teacher likes fruit. So we have the verb here. So the teacher likes, and the teacher likes fruit. However, when you add a missing component, you are changing the meaning of a sentence because in here you're adding the verb. So that's how you define a sentence fragment. It's either a missing subject or verb, or it's a dependent clause, i.e. has a subordinate conjunction. We talked about an example, and we wrote a solution. Either add a missing component, if it's missing a subject or verb, or remove the subordinate conjunction. Okay, so that's the first problem. Let's take a look at the second problem. What is the definition of a comma splice? If you remember the definition now, you can write it down as a paraphrase. Practice your paraphrasing skill. At the same time, if you're stuck, you can always check the lecture notes. Let's see what it says. Here, a comma splice. You need two independent clauses. They are joined. Now, here's the key. Only a comma. That means not a semicolon and not a comma plus coordinating conjunction. Okay, so let's write that down. So I might write two independent clauses joined by only a comma. So it's kind of a bad or wrong compound sentence. So let's try an example. So notice I don't actually just copy the example. You may start with that, but if you want to practice, you should write your own phrase. Try making a sentence. So here we have the example. So here's the sentence. The girl and her dog enjoys long walks. Clause 1, comma, and only a comma. They also like to jump in the pond after these walks. Clause 2. So we have the girl and her dog, that's a compound subject. Enjoy, that's your verb. And then here they, which is this same girl and dog, also like to jump in the pond after these walks. Okay, so we have two clauses joined together, but only with a comma, a bad compound sentence. So let me try making one too. I'll probably write something simpler. The cat likes to sleep, comma. It purrs while it sleeps. So I have a similar example. I have the subject, the cat, and likes. And then the second clause, I have it, referring to the cat, and purrs, the verb for the second clause. Now, I need to figure out what the solution is. Remember, a comma splice is a bad compound sentence. So, if I refer to how to make a compound sentence properly, I can fix this. So a compound sentence, I need to use, if you're stuck, you can check the comma, you can check the slide. Do you remember? You need to use a semicolon or a comma with a subordinate conjunction, such as and or but. So I have two ways of fixing this. So A, use semicolon, or B, use comma and subordinate conjunction. Either way, I'm making a proper compound sentence, so it might look something like this. So the cat, if I use the semicolon, likes to sleep, semicolon, it purrs while it sleeps. And for B, if I use a comma and subordinate conjunction, I would write the first sentence. I'm running out of space, so sentence 1, comma, I'll use and because they're related, and then sentence 2. The cat likes to sleep, comma, and it purrs while it sleeps. Alright, so we've done two problems and solutions so far. So the third problem is a fused sentence. Again, we're going to need the definition. Let's see what it says. We need two independent clauses. They are joined together, but there is no connecting words or punctuation at all. So it's another bad compound sentence, but this one's worse. There's nothing, no connection between them. So I write the definition again. Independent clauses with no connection at all. Not even a comma. So another bad compound sentence. Okay, now we just need to figure out an example and a solution. Now the solution is very similar to a comma splice because you're trying to make a good compound sentence. Use semicolon or use comma and subordinate conjunction. And if I were to save time, I could use the same example. The cat likes to sleep. And then I just make no connection whatsoever and just keep writing. It purrs while it sleeps. Okay. So if you keep writing this way, you're going to make a run-on sentence. But when you have two independent clauses together, that's a fused sentence. The solution is the same. So you're making the bad compound sentence into a good compound sentence. So you do that by either adding a semicolon or using a comma and a subordinate conjunction. Let's just check the example to see if we can see how the sentence is fused in the example. She is a sessional instructor at Corpus Christi. She is, and then, oh, there's more. She also teaches part-time at Kwantlen. Subject 2, verb 2. Okay, and no connection whatsoever between clause 1 and clause 2. A fused sentence. And if you were to fix it, you could use either a comma, a subordinate conjunction word, or a semicolon. Alright, so those are the 3 problems: sentence fragment, comma splice, and fused sentence. And that's it. So we have 3 sentence problems based on the 6 types of sentences and how to fix them. So let's finish it off, our notes off, and write down the cues in the summary. So, sentence problems and how to fix them. Okay, so we have sentence fragment or fragment. Number 2, comma splice, comma splice, and number 3, fused sentence. And if I want to remember how the second and third error works, I might write myself compound sentence or independent clauses just to help me remember. Okay, and so these cues again should help you recall and think about and use the details, in this case sentence problems and how to fix them. So this set of notes in my summary. Teaches 3 sentence problems. And how we can fix each one. Okay, so I paraphrased the summary a little bit because I kept saying sentence problems and how to fix them, but that summary should remind you and help you explain to anyone that you're trying to share this with what the notes are actually about. Use the cues to help you recall the details to explain or to use, and then the details tell you the 3 different types of sentence problems and the details on how to fix them along with examples and solutions. So that's it for part 2. Again, if you have any questions, you can post your questions on Canvas or email me directly. Practice these in your summary part 2, draft 2 to rewrite it for practice, or practice these sentence types in your practice sheets and the course pack, as well as using it for your opinion essay. Okay, good luck and stay tuned.